Okay, we will kick off today. So I would like to welcome our three panellists and also all our participants nationally that have tuned in for today's webinar on looking beyond the clerkship process. So my name's Susan Pincus and I'm the National Careers Professional with the College of Law. And this afternoon's webinar will be focusing on joining the profession via entry points other than clerkships and how best to overcome opportunities to develop your skills and knowledge, and also the inevitable obstacles that will crop up along the way. So it will become very clear from our guest speakers that there is more than one pathway that can lead to starting your career. I am very excited to present our three panellists who have generously agreed to share their key insights and learnings from their career journeys. So please welcome Frances Kalaki, who is our Assistant Director, Executive Office with the ACCC, the Australian Competition and Consumer Commission, and Frances is based in Melbourne. We also have Kiara Kelly, who is a collaborative family law with the Brisbane Family Law Centre and based in sunny Brisbane. And then we have Emma Campbell, who is a workplace relations solicitor with Lynch Meyer Lawyers, and Emma is based in Adelaide. So welcome everyone. Just a couple of housekeeping matters before we kick off. If we can leave questions to the end of the session. So for all of those that have tuned in, if you can just write those into the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, as opposed to chat, it just makes it a lot easier for me to just manage the questions. And also that the session is actually being recorded, and you will get a link to the recording probably sometime next week, and also like a quick feedback survey if you could complete that too. So over to our panellists now to introduce themselves briefly and give us a high level summary, and then we will kick off. So Frances, do you want to start?
Thank you, Susan, and thank you for inviting me here today. It's wonderful to be able to talk. So I guess I'm what you'd call a later lawyer. I spent around 15 years working as an accountant before I decided to study law. So my first 7 years had very much a finance and a banking and investment banking focus. Then I spent 4 years running and growing a business in the UK, and returning to Australia, I spent 3 years as a chief financial officer and company secretary of a public company. I guess during that time, combined it very much with voluntary work and contributing to causes that had sort of meaning to me. And that change, I guess, from the finance world to law was really driven by a need for more meaning and purpose in my work. I guess really to align what I did in terms of my work and my practice with my values. So I was very fortunate to study law and very fortunate to land a role with the ACCC. And I've been undertaking, I guess, a variety of different work there, from retail energy company investigations, whether or not they're complying with a variety of their statutory responsibilities. Also working in their parliamentary liaison team, so that involves briefings with ministers and treasurer and our portfolio ministers, and also looking at the governance aspects of the organisation as a regulator. So how can we be more effective at what we do as a regulator in terms of administering the Competition and Consumer Act? So lots of very exciting issues and matters to look at in terms of what I'm doing. So,
sounds fantastic, sounds very exciting, and thanks for giving us that introduction, and we'll be asking you a lot of questions. On to you, Kiara.
Thank you, Susan. I can see all of those numbers down the bottom ticking up. That's so excited. I'm super thrilled to be here today, so thank you for having me. I guess about me, I am a early career professional. I've been a lawyer for coming up to 2 years now. I am a collaborative family lawyer at Brisbane Family Law Centre, and that's a term that some people may not have heard before. I guess it feeds into the fact that here at BFLC, we help people live their best lives following separation and divorce. And we all subscribe to the belief that everyone is entitled to chase their best lives. So we create an environment, an incredibly warm and welcoming, a calm environment for people to come into to get help for their legal issues that arise as a result of their separations. And the reason why I'm called a collaborative family lawyer is because I've had specific training to help me manage my files in a way which avoids the court system at all. We make the court process the absolute last resort. We do that through a targeted process called the collaborative process, and the matters which are right for the collaborative process then proceed through a series of meetings. We get experts involved in terms of child experts or forensic accountants and things like that, because the goal is that every decision that needs to be made as part of the family law matter is done in an open, collaborative environment, often in the same room. So we tackle a problem in chunks in a series of meetings. I'm looking forward to talking to you all today about how I got here, about how if a role like this sounds appealing, you can create one. So really thrilled to be here.
Okay, thanks very much, Chiara. We look forward to hearing about all those suggestions and tips. Very exciting. And Emma, over to you.
Hi, so my name's Emma Campbell. I work at Lynch My Lawyers, which is a mid-tier commercial firm in Adelaide. I do workplace relations. I worked previously at a firm in Adelaide. It was a boutique firm, and I worked as a generalist solicitor there. Pretty much had experience and exposure to most areas of law before deciding to specialise. My career started off basically when I was at university. I started working at that my old firm, the boutique firm, as a paralegal. So I've had experience from a administration side, and then transferred into a solicitor's role there, and had experience and exposure to lots of different areas of law before I moved to a bigger commercial firm. And a typical week in my life, I work on a whole range of employment related matters. So that might be employment contracts, it might be advising companies in terms of restructuring, restaffing, there's unfair dismissal claims, discrimination claims, harassment. I also do various advice in relation to corporate and commercial matters, and we also have exposure to litigation. So there might be, for example, contract disputes where we are either in court or there's a bit of a dispute between two parties. So the work is really varied, and each week is really unpredictable. It's hard to say, but a week in my life can range from lots of matters in court or seeing clients to lots of advisory work, and it's always changing.
Okay, which keeps it very, I suppose, challenging and exciting at the same time.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, everyone, for the introduction. What I thought I might do is just ask a couple of questions to each of you, and then what we'll do is we'll kind of just open up some questions, and then just about 15 minutes before we finish up, I'll open the questions up to all the participants as well, because I'm sure that they're going to have lots of questions to ask you. So just starting with you, Frances, you mentioned coming to law as a mature age and as someone that had had a previous career. Tell us a little bit about the types of opportunities that you got involved in when you were studying.
So I did quite a few volunteer opportunities, which I found very rewarding. So working with West Justice Community Legal Centre in the west of Melbourne, Victoria Legal Aid, working in their family law unit, which I found really, really enjoyable. So for me, I guess I've really certainly picked up one of the most important things about my work is who I work with and the type of people I work with. Very, very important. And I think what I found in those two environments was people with similar values, similar motivations for getting up in the morning and going to work. It's kind of like, oh yeah, I do like this. It's nice to be around these type of people.
And do you feel that having a sense of your values and what was important to you came about because you came to law later, having that life experience?
Oh, look, I think when you've fallen in enough holes and pulled yourself out, you eventually learn not to step in them again, and that's a helpful way to get a sense of what really matters to you, if I can use that analogy.
Okay. And where did clerkships kind of fit into your job search strategy?
Well, I guess we're all aware of clerkships and the penultimate year, and the clock is ticking and the pressure's growing. So I was initially sort of keen to participate in that process. I guess I sort of think about clerkships as a learning opportunity, because when I applied for clerkships, I got 0 responses and didn't crack any of them, which at the time was a how am I going to respond to this situation type of opportunity.
It must have been, quite mortifying at the stage. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'd got good marks and I can, present reasonably well, etc., and KB'd completely, 100% knocked back. So for me, it was really about, being very clear, I guess, on those questions. What do I really want? What's important to me? What are the employer's values and how do they align with mine? And what's my plan now? And I guess there's probably a lot of people out there who are in difficult circumstances asking those sort of similar questions. So for me, it was very much, okay, I need my own personal sales plan. I need to make sure I've got my head in the right space for the next 6 months while I go through application processes. I need my target list of people I'm going after and my tactics of how I'm going to hit them. And reflecting on preparation for this session today is very much about, what was my sales plan? If you Google sales plan, it'll come up with a whole lot of stuff about how you can set up a whole program of activity to work towards your goals. And that's essentially where I found myself after being knocked back by everyone I applied for, which didn't make me happy. What do I do next?
Yeah. So you kind of learnt from that experience, and you took upon and you reflected and you worked out another kind of plan of attack.
Yes, and I think I'm very fortunate to, sometimes getting knocked back is actually the best thing that can happen to you, because you end up in a much better place. Where I'm at now, I guess, is certainly where I'd like to be.
Just a question before I just move to Kiara. I'm just interested, Francis, just because we have so many people that are studying law now that are coming to law later on with previous careers. How did you talk to your kind of transferable skills, and how did you showcase those in your applications when you were kind of applying for positions?
So I guess it's very much framing it in terms of what I can contribute, not, oh, look at me, look at all my wonderful experience and these are all the things I can do, because I'm going to start again, if you like. I'm at the bottom of the ladder. I don't know very much when it comes to this new world. So yes, it's about what can I contribute and how can I bring those skills to the table.
Yeah. So as opposed to knowing it all,
As opposed to being a know-it-all person that's going to come in and hit the ground running at 100 miles an hour. And part of that, a lot of that too, is it's just, I guess, demonstrating that attitude that it's, I'm going to be working for people that are younger than me. I'm open-minded and flexible and happy to do that.
Yeah, I love that. Such a kind of an open growth mindset there. Just moving on, Kiara, just be interested if you can tell us why you deliberately didn't apply for clerkships when you're at uni?
Yeah, I let the open for applications date pass. I watched it go by with complete terror, but in that moment, I had to back myself. So there is a backstory to it, and that is at some point during my law degree, somewhere toward the beginning, but not right away, of course, I decided that I wanted to be a family lawyer. I came to that decision, I think. It's hard to piece this together in hindsight, but I came to it, I think, because I first decided that I wanted to work for people. So I wanted to help people in their personal disputes. That made my pool of options a little bit smaller. The big three that are tossed around are family, employment, and succession law in that world. I really just let myself sit in that decision, and it came to be that family law was the choice. I felt, sometimes I describe it as a bit of a language, and even at uni, I just spoke family law. I understood it. It felt most me. And that's a bit woo-woo. And I think if someone is not yet to find their niche, it's okay, it will come. But I also don't have any magic to help you find it, except for just really sit in yourself, have a look into all of your options, maybe narrow it down for acting in personal disputes, acting in disputes between corporations, or acting in transactions or disputes relating to the government. I think broadly that's a good way to start. So I decided I wanted to be a family lawyer. I then looked at where family lawyers worked, and they worked in an array of varied boutique practices. There are a few family law firms that are within larger mid-tier commercial firms. So some mid-tier firms have a full suite of services, and you can be a family lawyer in a mid-tier firm. I decided I wanted to be a family lawyer in a boutique firm, mostly because I worked in a boutique firm through uni and I loved the autonomy I had. I got to chip in decision making, or at least I thought I did because I was a settlement clerk, but it felt like I did, and that was really cool. So I had those few key things in mind, and quite simply I had to stare at myself and say, you can't become a family lawyer in a boutique firm through a clerkship pathway. Not to say clerkship wouldn't have been useful, but there is no direct pathway to being a family lawyer in a boutique law firm that involves a really lineal clerkship graduate solicitor pathway. So that being said, I decided if I don't want to be a lawyer in a mid or top tier full service or commercial firm, I shouldn't apply for a clerkship. And that's where I found myself sitting and watching that application date float on by.
Okay. And you haven't looked back, obviously.
No, that's right.
Yeah, I mean, I just know that when we first spoke, your approach and strategy was so fascinating in that you kind of worked quite strategically, but you worked backwards. So you really did all the research into family law, and you also came across the firm that you're working for now. And it's almost like you kind of worked a little bit backwards in the way you pitched yourself and your brand and your skills and the way you. Yeah, so tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, Francis used the word sales plan earlier. I love that. I've not heard it. I love it. And I think that's what I did. So thank you. It builds on what I was just saying. I sat down, I really asked myself what I wanted. So once I knew I wanted to be a family lawyer in a boutique law firm, I did start looking around the market, because at the end of the day, that's what job hunting is. It's a market and you're wanting to enter it. So I looked at the market. I Googled almost as if I was a client. Family lawyers Brisbane, family lawyers Gold Coast. I grew up on the Gold Coast. And some key players popped up. And I saw that they were all boutique law firms, and I popped on their career pages, and every single one of the career pages said, we're not hiring right now, keep checking back. Because a boutique law firm hires out of need rather than just cyclically because. There is no, at here at BFLC, we don't say, oh, it's the 1st of January, how many more people do we need? We wait and see, is our work exceeding our capacity, or is there some other product or service that we want to build? So it's always out of need. So I thought to myself, my God, if these people are only hiring when they need to, am I going to spend the rest of my life sitting on seek.com waiting for something to pop up? Largely, the answer is yes to that question. But then I thought, when that opportunity does come up, how will I be the most attractive candidate? And that's exactly when I started working backwards. And I put myself in the shoes of a boutique law firm family lawyer, and I wondered what they would want to see. And it's a bit of a guess, but I did try to speak to professionals and ask them that very question. But at the same time, yes, a bit of a guess. And what I came up with is that they're going to want to see that I have a genuine interest in family law. So I went over and above the family law elective at uni. I did my own research. I tried to get involved in matters in the law firm I was working at. It was one of those generalist law firms that a family law file will come in twice a year, and I just launched myself into those. I hung out at professional associations for family lawyers. So we have our own professional association called Flipper, FLPA, and I was just there like a bad smell all the time.
Okay.
And that was how I was going to demonstrate a genuine interest in family law. I then thought to myself, well, if they're not going to hire me because I had a clerkship and then because I was a grad, I thought maybe they'll hire me because I've worked at places like them. And so I worked at a boutique law firm in a different role as a settlements clerk. So I was one of those people you see in sneakers running around the CBD at about 2 o'clock on a weekday because they're doing a property settlement. And that was really fun. I really loved that. And then I just built up as much other experience as I could as well.
Right. And so then you jumped on the opportunity when that came up where you are now. So
yeah, so
on the radar.
Yeah, not even that. So in my research, and because I was spending so much time around family lawyers, the magic Facebook algorithm delivered me an advertisement that the firm Brisbane Family Law Centre, or rather the lawyer Clarissa Raywood, had put out. And I saw this ad, and it was a real personal moment where Clarissa was talking about just the human side of being a lawyer. And it was just some content to build her client base. And so I went into this rabbit hole, and it was the online world that BFLC, Brisbane Family Law Centre, and Clarissa put out. Because a key way that we get new clients and get new interest is that we have a really strong focus on personal branding. So that's one way a law firm markets themselves. Some people use traditional marketing mix, so they pop on radio ads and you see billboards and they're super effective. Some law firms do some non-traditional things. We do that. We do personal branding. So I followed this law firm. I realized that their values were exactly aligned with mine. I realized that when I was imagining myself as a family lawyer, because that's a very loaded emotional area of law, I realized that BFLC was practicing the way I wanted to also be. I just had a very human connection to BFLC and Clarissa. And so I even more specifically narrowed down my plan, even down to a position in a single firm, and continue to work backwards. And I thought, well, they clearly value personal branding. I will give this personal branding thing a go. And I still say to this day, I got my job off Instagram, because across the suite of social media platforms, I put out who I was, what I believe. I signaled to the universe that I was a law student looking to work for this type of law firm. And myself and Clarissa's path just kept crossing because we were going in the same circles. And so when I finished university, I put up a post on Instagram saying I've done it. And my phone buzzed at 7:30 the next morning because Clarissa said, well, I can't let this lady go work for someone else because she's clearly been stalking me for 2 years. And that's exactly what it was.
Oh, that's amazing. What a fantastic story. And yeah, you were certainly a woman on a mission. So it paid off. That's just incredible. And really some really, really great insights to take away from that around the branding and positioning.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for that. Emma, over to you. So perhaps just tell us a little bit about your strategy, because you started off more generalist, where you were exposed to a number of different areas within
Yes.
law, and
Yes.
then you decided you wanted to be more of a specialist.
Yes, that's right. So, I mean, my strategy is far less planned than Kiara's. That's, fantastic. I started off, I think, quite similar in the sense that when I was at university, I identified that I wanted to work. I really enjoyed family law, and I really enjoyed dealing with people and dealing with personal problems, as opposed to more corporate advisory style work at the time. So when I was at university, I decided I wanted to get experience working in a law firm before I graduated, and in fact before I did my GDLP. And I was quite relentless with my applications, as well, as you had to be and have to be. Adelaide's a really small pool, and a lot of people in Adelaide are very fortunate enough to know people and can get experience at university. I wasn't one of those people, so I had to apply for experience and try and get a job and try and get paid work in order to get any type of experience when I was at uni. And I found a job at a boutique firm that specialised in family law. It specialised in wills and estates and also commercial. So it seemed like a really good fit. And they had a 12-month maternity role that they needed to fill for a paralegal. So I applied, and I actually didn't get a response. And believe it or not, I went in there and said to them, I've got 1 year left of uni to go, and my degree had worked out in the sense that my final year I only had 2 electives because I had started doing a double. So I had time to fill a 12-month role. And I said to them, I'd be great for this role. I've got experience working in admin. I had worked previously at a gym. And I said to them, I really want this role, etc. So they appreciated that I came in, and I think I started the following week. So I started, but it was great. But I started working as a paralegal. So I predominantly did family law. We also had some injury files. We also had conveyancing, which is property related, which came off the back of matrimonial settlements. So I did all types of paralegal experience in that first 12 months. I really enjoyed it. And then the following year, when I did my GDLP, the girl who had left her role on maternity leave, she didn't actually return. So they offered me to stay on while I did GDLP. So I then studied full-time my GDLP that following year, as well as working full-time as a paralegal in that following year as well. So that was a chaotic, crazy, very stressful year. But I'm really happy I did that, because I thought to myself, even though I was on a 12-month contract and I could have finished at the end, I thought I will stay, because if I finish my GDLP, I've already got a job here. Hopefully they can keep me on as a solicitor. And as Kiara was saying, boutique firms don't just hand out a job here and there just because it's a certain date. They have to have a need for it. So I ended up staying, finishing my GDLP, and they created a role for me at the end as a junior solicitor. I, at the time, chose to do a generalist role at the firm because I wanted exposure, despite having originally decided I really liked dealing with people and helping people resolve their issues, which is still one of my values and what I enjoy doing. I did really want to get more broad exposure. So I wasn't, I think, as set as what Kiara is or was in terms of what I wanted to do. And I knew that I really wanted to get more exposure and experience in different areas, because the more I worked for the firm, the more I got exposed to other areas, the more things that piqued my interest. And I thought, I want to know a bit more. So I'm really happy I did that, because I worked for just over 2 years at the same boutique firm doing general work. Pretty much anything that we had estate litigation, property disputes, we had commercial disputes, advisory work, leasing, pretty much everything but employment law. So I worked in so many different areas and got exposure to a lot of different things. And by the end of that 2 years, my first 2 years of practice, I realised I really wanted to specialise. And the reason I guess I had transition to that was I went through a few phases. I started off knowing that I just wanted to get experience and deal with people and problems. Then I wanted to get broader experience. And then once I had that broader experience, I realized I really wanted to make it more niche. I wanted to become really good at one thing. And I think a lot of that might have come from some people who are great generalist solicitors and can do it really well. But I started to feel as if I wanted to get really good at one area, or at least, make it a little bit more niche so that I could develop my own personal brand in that area. I feel like in this day and age, you want to be able to go out and introduce yourself or market and go to events and have a bit of purpose and a definite path as to what you do and what you can help and why you can help them. And I think from a marketing perspective, which is also important in law, you want to make sure you've got a bit of a personal brand aligned. So I got to a point where I thought, yep, I want to specialise. And I had always been interested in workplace relations or employment law because of the fact that it ties in a lot of different things in terms of you're dealing with people, you're helping resolve problems, and you've also got the commercial aspects to it. So I was quite interested in employment law and ended up having an interview at Lynch-Meyer and was fortunate enough to get the position here. So that happened 2 years ago. And ever since I've been working in that role. And I think for me that it's just been a bit of a process in terms of transitioning and finding my way over the last few years, and especially finding my way from when I was admitted to where I am now. I think it's just taking on different experiences, working out what you like, working out what you don't like, and then following what you think would be right for you in that moment. And I think once I got to my first 2 years of practice and I realised that's what I really wanted to do, really wanted to specialise, it's been good. And when I say specialise, it's not to a point where you're ever niche and, so pigeonholed in one area, because most areas can be quite broad. And like I said, employment has lots of transferable skills. You've got contract disputes, you've got advisory work, there's litigation, there's work health safety, prosecutions, which is a criminal jurisdiction. So we've got crim matters, we've got all types. So I think the variety as well is what piqued my interest, because I need that level of variety.
Yeah, okay. Thanks for that. That's absolutely fascinating, and just how your kind of career has evolved as well, and just going through those different exposures to different practice areas and the type of firms also. What I thought I might do now is just open up to the three of you, and just for you to share and also build on each other's ideas. But just one thing, Emma, I remember you said to me, and I was like really, really kind of wowed, was when you were doing voluntary work, and you used to go off while you were working, and you would go off at lunchtime and visit some of the shelters, and also use that as an opportunity to kind of talk to lawyers and ask them questions. Do you want to just take us through a little bit about that?
Yeah. So I'm a serial overcommitter, if you haven't already realised. So when I first was admitted into practice and I started working in as a generalist and working pretty much on anything that came across my desk, I feel like my number one top value and priority when I was newly admitted was just gaining exposure, meeting people, and really understanding more about different practice areas and what other people were doing for work. And I wanted to get as much exposure as I possibly could, as early as I could, to help my knowledge and help me grow, to meet other people and make connections, but also to have a better understanding about all the different areas and where I might want to eventually end up. So I did that by not only working in my firm, but also looking for whatever volunteer opportunities I could in Adelaide to get more exposure. So one of those options was the Hutt Street Centre, which is a homeless shelter in Adelaide, and they do free legal clinic advisory work in lunch hours. So I did that during my lunch hour on a Monday. I'd go out and do an hour of free legal advice, and a lot of that was just general advisory about lots of low-level things, but it was still really interesting. You got to meet other solicitors that were also advising and doing the volunteer work, which helps you broaden your connections, which I think is really important in the industry. And then I also did volunteer legal advice at a Westside Community Lawyers on a Thursday night. And again, it would be a pool of me and 3 practitioners who would see that, have a list of appointments for the night. And it would be a variety of matters where it would be free half-an-hour legal clinic advice. But in that time, you got to bounce ideas off with each other. So if someone came in, you weren't sure what was going on, you could go out and ask someone, or you were waiting for clients and you got to chat to people and find out where they worked, what they were doing for work. We would talk about matters that people had on at that stage. So what interesting files you might be working on, and things that sort of helped me understand more about all the different practice areas and what areas I might be interested in, and essentially just grow my community. So it was a lot, but it was worthwhile, and I've met a lot of great people through the process.
Yeah, no, that's great. So there was, like, you were really, really curious, and there was that theme of you just asking lots of questions and building your connections as well that way.
Yes.
What about, like, Frances and Kiara? Tell us a little bit about the types of things that you were doing, thinking back to when you were an undergrad. Take us through kind of some of the things that you were doing and some of the cool stuff outside the traditional law firms.
I might jump in, Kiara. I think just to build on a point Kiara made earlier around social media. So LinkedIn can be a great friend in terms of, one, learning about the market, understanding it. One of the things I did after I got completely KB'd on all my clerkship applications was to identify and think about, well, who are the firms I would like to work for then? Who are people I can identify in them? How can I get in touch with them, sit down, have a coffee and understand the world that they exist in, so that I'm better equipped to make good applications or pitch myself into that environment. So that's certainly very helpful. It's connecting with other people, however you might want to do it. LinkedIn's a great tool for that. So reach out, connect to people.
Yeah, I mean, like, I often hear from students and from people that I work with that they just say, well, how do you actually do that? That takes such courage, and it's so uncomfortable. Like, God forbid, picking up the phone or speaking to someone. I just don't feel comfortable with it. What would your advice be to that? How do you get over that?
Well, I guess most people who go to uni now will clock up at least 30 grand's worth of debt. Add your PLT debt on top of that. What's it worth? I mean, what's the investment that you've made, and how are you going to make it happen? And when you go out there and you need to develop a client base and you need to talk to people, you might as well get the skills going early.
Yeah, fantastic. What about you, Kiara?
That's great, Frances. I think I need you to motivate me on some days if I'm feeling a little bit sluggish. I need you to be like, what's it worth? What's your investment? Because that's so true, right? A moment of proper fear, justified fear. Is it worth letting that moment pass because of that fear? I'd always say no. One theme I'm picking up here is just, it takes an incredible amount of hard work. I think all 3 of us at some stages were thinking, I can't add another thing. I'm exhausted. I remember a few moments in my undergrad where it was very visceral. I had to very much power through one particular hellish week. I remember in my undergrad, there would be weeks where for some reason, everything in the world would fall. You'd have 50 million assignments and a big work thing and a big extracurricular thing. So I think hard work is going to come. Maybe that's the secret. Maybe it just takes a lot of hard work. And I think it will, if that is what you're doing, it will equip you so well for early practice, because I really focused on getting this job that my first couple of months of early practice were like, holy crap, there's a whole career I now have to do. So that's a whole other webinar, but the hard work will really prepare you for the hard work that's also required in practice. Yeah. Other things I did during my undergrad, I took a job, as I said, at a boutique law firm, but then there would be plenty of opportunities that I would hear either through the grapevine or through my university, which were one-off or a couple of week types of things. And I had the attitude that I applied for everything. Unless it was like an international arbitration moot or something that was really not applicable, even if it was only slightly applicable, I would apply for everything. It doesn't mean that that went my way every single time, but at the very least, I had experience of applying. Because if it takes a few goes to get a successful application, I was getting the rejections under my belt. That's my theory with a lot of things in early practice as well. The first few things of everything are really scary, so quickly get them under the belt. So if you apply for everything, the worst case scenario is that you learn how to better talk about yourself, market yourself, better show up at interviews, all of these things. Some examples, I guess, are I did work at a community legal centre after hours. I did a hell of a lot of personal branding. I approached the Family Law Practitioners Association and was just a speed dial number they could call if they needed someone to put out chairs at their events. And that meant that I got to attend all these really expensive events for free, put out a chair for myself, and it was great. But also, eventually, I was invited to their larger conference that happens once a year, and it's very fancy, and it's in Noosa. I was invited to come along as a guest because I would have to put the chairs out and put the programs out and run around with a microphone during Q&A time. But all of my colleagues now remember me with my microphone running around at that conference. So that's one tip I have for people aspiring to be family lawyers. That's a good tip.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And also, like, it's a quite a nice, easy place to start too. So for those people that are maybe feeling a little bit nervous in their early years, start somewhere like that. That's great.
Yeah.
What about like the role of mentors? So just, perhaps if any of you want to just share your experience and how like a mentor kind of was helpful in providing direction and guidance.
I didn't have a formal mentor. I'm more associated with myself with many practitioners and just got to chatting. I guess an obvious one is my current boss, Clarissa. I think I just found someone who has the same human values as me and who practices the way I wanted to practice. And I just absorbed what they did. If she was speaking somewhere, I'd be there. If she wrote something, I'd read it. If it wasn't a formal mentor relationship, it became a quasi one, and certainly she was mentoring me without even knowing, because I was trying to follow in her footsteps.
Right, okay. And I think Frances and Emma, did you want to add anything to finding a mentor and how important that is? Any advice on that?
Perhaps just to build on what has been said already, I think in terms of mentor, for me, it was very much about choosing who I wanted to work for. That's going to be the biggest determinant of your success. What doors will they open to your future? And, that comes down to where do they operate in the market? What is their reputation amongst other practitioners? Who knows about them? Who doesn't? It's a small world, and even, a very small world that we all live in. And the more people you talk to, you'll very quickly figure out where people sit, who are those really well-respected, trusted operators, and who should you avoid.
Yeah, okay. So sorry, Emma, did you want to say anything?
I was just going to say, I agree with Frances, and I think my mentors have mainly been the people I've been employed to work for or work with. And just one important point is, I think it's really important when you're especially quite junior and practicing, to identify someone who you can work with and you can trust to ask questions. So it might not be your direct boss, but it might be someone else that you work with that you can say, hey, I've got this, or so-and-so's instructed me to do X, Y, Z. And identifying someone who you can trust and go to for help is really, really important, because then I guess in one way that is a mentor, but they might not even be assigned to work with you, but they can help you, direct you to the right place, or help you with difficult situations you're going through. But I also agree that you want to know who you're working for. Do they align with your values? And also, can you will they support you in terms of growing, training, learning? That's all very important. You want to make sure that your mentor is investing in you as well as you're investing in them.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's really good. And it's interesting how there's been that real theme amongst all three of you around the importance of following values and following your intuition as well, and kind of what sits with you in terms of purpose as well. Just before we start to open up the questions, and I'd urge you all to start putting your questions now into Q&A, and then we'll start answering those. In terms of kind of like the current situation with COVID and the fact that, our world's been just turned upside down, what would be some of your suggestions and advice to students, to PLT, alumni, etc., for what they can be doing during this time? Where, it's much harder maybe to be more selective. It's some people feel that they have to just take whatever they can get. So kind of what would your suggestions be in terms of the current shift in the market?
Look, my advice is, in terms of the market and taking what you can get, that's probably good advice if it is the case that you are struggling to find somewhere to work, because as you can see from what I've done, law is quite transferable generally, and you can try I know people who have worked in insurance who have moved to a complete different area, for example. You can build on your skills. So the first job might not be your end goal, but that doesn't necessarily matter, because the law is a very long career, and it is important to get exposure and experience, and just working in an environment where you're exposed to different areas and learning every day is important regardless. And you can always try to plan to make your move even once you get into that your first foot in the door. You might know that that's not your forever home, but you might be planning from that moment to make the move by diversifying your skills, getting exposure while you're in the market and working for someone else by going out doing volunteer work, etc. In terms of, because of COVID and the impact on what COVID's had on the market generally, if you can't get a position, I would recommend doing volunteer work, as much experience work as you possibly can. I appreciate and know it's a big ask on people to do that, and it is hard, and I've been there as well. But even things like at the moment online, there's lots of research, there's try and find out if you can help write articles for online subscriptions. So our local law society, for example. There's also, I think, barristers, anyone who you can try and get in contact with to do legal research, any type of task that might help out, might gain you a little bit more exposure while you're waiting to try and get that job, a little bit more experience, and also just help build your connections.
That's fantastic. Yeah, great advice. We might start going to the questions because they're coming in. So I'll just open this up. So what advice do you have for penultimate year students who have no experience in law firms whatsoever? Okay, is volunteering experience sufficient to show passion in law?
I think getting out there and talking to people is very, very important. And, I have 2 young children. So when I was going through law school, it was very difficult in terms of scheduling, timing, etc., etc. Not all students have the financial capabilities to be able to afford to go volunteer because they need to work at a job that pays them money. People understand that. But I think if you are out there, you're talking to people, you're actively understanding what is going on, you can demonstrate your passion in a variety of ways.
Okay, thanks, Francis. Just another question. Curious to hear your thoughts on pathways beyond law, given a growing number of law graduates don't practice law. Does anyone tackle that one?
Yeah, I mean, there's heaps of different types of graduate programs that you can apply for, as I understand it. There might even be something called Grad Australia online, but there's options in terms of policy and procedure and procurement. So there's there are different pathways, and I wouldn't be hesitant to consider those at all, because if you don't know if you want to be a lawyer, or if you're not sure if law is the right thing for you, there would be, and you're also trying to find work, there's no harm in trying to get into a role where it isn't working as a practitioner. I mean, I personally haven't had experience in that. Francis might have a little bit more insight, but I think there's absolutely no harm.
So I guess opportunities with the APS are fantastic in that way, because you bring your law background to problem solving. And I think this sort of answers another question that's up there. Do you need to have a financial background to work for the ACCC? The answer is no. It's about problem solving. So if the treasurer comes to you with a question saying, look, we've got these big digital platforms and we want to understand what's going on in relation to the market and what we should do as potential policy outcomes, it's about, well, how do you solve that problem? So some of the most senior people within the ACCC, a lot of them have law backgrounds. Some of them come from, nursing and health and various other areas. So it's very much about problem solving, and lawyers are generally good at problem solving, but it's always great to have diversity of thought around that as well.
I just don't think that there is any one fatal mistake you can make. I see so often in especially Facebook groups, young early professionals or students posting something like, if I took this job, is it going to be my end? And I just don't think that you can make any one fatal mistake that's going to tank your entire career, except a few, I don't know, suitability issues, of course. I think that if you have a really niched goal, and that really niched goal needs to be pushed back a little bit because of the wild world that we've woken up into in 2020. It's the same philosophy. It's niching yourself as much experience as possible and getting your brand sorted. Just because that goal has been pushed back slightly, maybe, it doesn't mean that the process needs to be any different. You can have a law degree and still be gaining experience. You can have a law degree and still be a volunteer at a CLC. There is no, there's nothing that's going to flatline your career, I don't think. Yeah. And so if it's a non-law opportunity, it's a non-law opportunity, just building off what you were saying, Francis.
Yeah, that's good. That's good advice. Just another question around after you graduate from law school, would you apply for paralegal positions and hope that it progresses to a junior lawyer? Or would you paralegal or do your GDLP, then apply for another firm as a junior solicitor? So just around pathways.
Yeah, so what is that magic time to jump, I guess? That's a really tricky question. I think that, again, if you have your goal and it needs to be pushed back, that's okay. If it's a means to an end of your goal that you take a paralegal position, go for it. Be open with your employer and let them know, I'm going to start doing my GDLP. That means I'll be finished in a year. I'll chat to you then, or maybe you don't even say that, but just be open. I think they can never take it away from you if you get admitted. So why not advance through that? If you're still working as a paralegal, that's okay. If you want to make a jump right now before GLDP versus afterwards, I'm not sure. I think that's much of a muchness. It depends on who you are, what skills you can offer. I'm sorry, I don't think there's a magic answer to when. Just take it day by day. Take the offers that you have right now. Try not to jump ahead too much.
Yep. How would you compare working at a boutique law firm as opposed to a bigger commercial law firm? For someone who hasn't found inspiration to start practicing, what would you suggest?
Yep. So I've worked in both. Working in a boutique firm, there's pros and cons of both, and I guess it depends on what you want. A boutique firm, from my experience, I found it was small, close-knit. We were all, we all knew each other very, very well. It was a supportive environment, and I got lots of exposure. I guess the difference with going to a bigger commercial firm, I've got far larger scale clients that I work with now, more blue chip clients. And that means, big multinational companies that you're providing advice to. So it's just a different level of work. And it's also, I guess, in terms of environment and culture, I mean, I'm lucky in the sense that I'm working at a firm that I really enjoy working at. We actually have a good culture. I'm sure that some people would say there's a difference between boutiques and large firms in terms of training support culture. I'm not sure of other people's experiences, but I would say in terms of exposure and autonomy, at a boutique firm, I found that I was quickly able to have a lot of exposure to matters and also a lot of autonomy with matters as well. So I had someone who was training me that was also very happy to give me files and let me, run with them. And I had lots of exposure. I was going into client meetings. I then have moved to a commercial firm since and have been able to have autonomy as well in terms of managing files and practicing. However, if you start at a larger scale firm as an early grad, a lot of the time, as I understand it, you don't have as much autonomy. You probably will be working on matters with more senior people for a little bit longer and working under supervision for a little bit longer in terms of, not necessarily running your own file load. But they're the key sort of differences. It's a really hard question to answer because every firm is different and every experience is very unique. So it depends on where you go, the people you work with, a whole bunch of things. And there's not really one right or wrong answer. So I think it is about working out what areas you want to work in. And like we said, values, areas, experience, training, exposure, they're the key things you should be looking at. I wouldn't necessarily say that working in a boutique firm or a commercial firm is one or the other better or worse. There's always going to be differences between the two, but it comes down to, I guess, what you want to do and what's your main goal and priority.
Thanks, Emma. We've got quite a lot of questions still coming through, so we might just have to have a cut-off point, and then I get those emailed so we can come back to you with the answers. But there's a question specifically for you, Kiara. Someone has also, like you, a huge passion for family law. She's wondering what your thoughts are on completing a Masters of Family Law after finishing a Bachelor of Law to make yourself more competitive in the market.
Yeah. I caveat all of this by saying I'm currently doing my LLM. So I say go for it. The timing of mine, though, was that I already had a position. I was a solicitor. I was working on files. Emma's exactly right in saying that there is a lot of autonomy at this level. So I really felt the knowledge gap between my undergrad and early practice. I felt like I studied family law for 12 weeks and even did a little bit more, but now I was a family lawyer, it seemed obscene. So I went and enrolled in my Masters. In terms of the timing of your Masters, I think that you will get a lot out of it no matter when you do it. I think you might get more out of it if you're doing it in conjunction with working on family law files. So you have an option to wait until you start working because the practical application is so much greater. That being said, if you aren't working as a solicitor yet and you think that might not happen right away, there is no harm in starting that study. Even the fact that you'd started it would be more competitive than not having started at all. And then maybe you can finish it when you get admitted and working as a solicitor. As a general theme, though, I really advocate for Masters. It really helped me. And it made me like learning again because I hated university with a burning passion. But now I was doing a Master's degree that coincided with what I actually cared about. So that was really important for me.
There's a couple of questions around virtual legal internships from like Inside Sherpa. Does anyone have an opinion about that? Is that something that can kind of be quite useful?
That sounds interesting. I've not heard of that.
Yeah. I mean, I would say, look into it and see what's involved. I would say any kind of opportunity like that would be definitely worthwhile. And I know Inside Sherpa's kind of got quite a lot of other resources as well. Just a couple of other last ones before we finish with the questions. And obviously, there's still a few more. There's one here, Francis, that talks about like developing skills while you're studying, and you mentioned problem solving. do you think that's important to try and build those skills to give you a competitive advantage?
I think so, but I think from someone, trying to cross that bridge from study to work, I think perhaps the most important is around communication. And it's around being able to, talk to people in person, structure really good written messages, because as lawyers, there's nothing more particular on than words. So it's, those are the real key skills. And I mean, by practicing, by going along, meeting people, having those conversations, start off really gentle with people that, are not necessarily so important to where you want to go and build up and up and up.
Yeah.
But there's certainly skills in terms of presenting yourself, getting in front of people, having that confidence, very important.
Okay, this is looks like a kind of a nice question maybe to finish off on. What do you foresee to be the future of legal practice beyond the traditional law firm?
God.
That's a nice.
I love this question. Can I have a go?
Yeah, give it a go.
I don't think that there will ever be a single robot lawyer that looks like me that sits at a desk and does my job. I was scared of the robot lawyer at university. I think it is a fear piece that's out there. The future looks like a lot more technology in law firms. I use a lot of different technologies to help me do my job better, faster, so that I can take on more. But what technology can't do is pass someone a box of tissues or send someone a gift after a particularly grueling mediation. So in order to beat that tech piece, just become a great lawyer with excellent technical knowledge, but is also able to straddle that line of being what we used to call soft skills. I've not come up with another term, but I don't like that term. Whatever the new term for soft skills is, all the things that aren't that were once kind of shooed away as being an optional extra, I think will become really important. And I think that clients will seek out, because you have to remember that at the moment, the client has the world at their fingertips. They can Google a family lawyer in Brisbane and have thousands of options. They can have lawyers that aren't in Brisbane trying to compete in that market. So we just have to find a way to be the most appealing we can be to that potential client. And I think when I buy a product, I'm planning my wedding at the moment, when I buy a product, I'm looking at the best branding, the best support, the values being out there, so that I can go, yeah, I believe in what you believe. And I just trust that the florist knows how to make flowers look pretty. I don't question that. That's a given now. I want extra, extra, extra. And I think lawyers have to adopt that methodology. And boutique and top tier are both going to just sail through that. There's no distinction, I think, between the different parts of the market and how they'll fare.
Fantastic. Yeah, that's a whole topic of another conversation, isn't it? Last question to you all. What didn't you know that you know now that would have helped you? Each of you. One thing.
So hard to choose one because it's just so many. I think backing yourself and trusting yourself and having confidence in yourself is so key. I feel like when you're young and you're newly admitted, and you're going out into the job market, it's really easy to have doubts and to be self-conscious or to feel a little bit vulnerable. So it's really important to just back yourself, be as confident as you can and trust yourself. And I think as well, just another key thing is also just to make sure you've got a support network around you, and to also I would have told myself to try and find a person that you can chat to, or that you can talk about your matters with, someone who you can trust to ask those questions at work as early as you can, to have that support.
Yep, fantastic. What about you,
I'll definitely reiterate what Emma said there. And particularly as someone coming to this a bit later, you feel sometimes you have all these skills to contribute and so much knowledge, but no one values it. And it's very much about backing yourself, really clearly taking the time to articulate what it is you can contribute, and relentlessly pursuing that, and relentlessly saying it over and over again to lots of different people.
Okay. Kiara.
I really agree with that. I think that I was just riddled with doubt a lot of the time because I had such a specific plan. I thought this is the worst idea ever. And I wish I could go back and just tell the, past me that everything worked out okay. That being said, what if it didn't? If it hadn't have worked out okay, I also would have liked to tell her that it's so okay if the same thing happened a year later, 6 months later, 18 months later, because, and again, this is a whole other webinar, because the day that I became admitted, I then became a lawyer. And that is a scary, stressful, big, exciting journey in itself. So if that has to wait a little while, that's not a bad thing, because I might have been a little bit more grown up or a little bit more resilient. And don't rush through this period of your life, and don't say that it needs to be on this date that the perfect opportunity comes. And I only say that because what comes right after that is equally grueling and is equally challenging. So just try to,
yeah. So it's kind of about like living a little bit in the moment as well, not trying to plan every single move, because as COVID has taught us, that is something
exactly
that we can't do. So trusting yourself a little bit more. I really love that. Yeah. All right. Well, unfortunately, it's time to end. I feel like we could have talked for much longer because you've all got just so much great insights and advice, and I love your determination and your grit, and just been amazing to share it. So, thank you to each and every one of you for just being so generous in sharing. And I've got some lovely messages saying thank you from all the participants as well. And we look forward to seeing everyone another time. There'll be lots more webinars as well. But a big thank you to all our panelists and for being so generous with your time. And thank you to all the participants for tuning in, and I hope you've taken away some great tips. Bye for now.
Thank you, Susan.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.